Alright lads, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be looking at a few vehicles from the recent update and giving you my opinion on whether these are good additions or are they some straight up stinkers. Jumping straight into the bad stuff, and up first is the JA37 DI-F21. The first top tier premium that comes equipped with AMRAMs, allowing you to bypass the grind right up to top tier. So is it worth the money? Well, top tier RRB at the minute is currently a hellscape in my opinion, with missiles being fired 2 minutes after takeoff, and the matches are over within 5 minutes. This means it's absolutely awful for grinding, as you don't really spend enough time in game to earn that much RP. And this is made 1,000 times worse by the plane itself. The JA37 is first found at battle rating 11.3, where its engine and flight model are already pretty bad. I think it was nerfed a few months ago and it's just pretty terrible at the minute. The plane's relatively slow, it absolutely bleeds all its speeds when you start to turn. Going into a merge, you do have quite a lot of AOA, but if you don't get a kill on that first turn, you're basically just slow with your arse hanging out and you will get spanked. And that is at 11.3. The JA37DI is now at battle rating 13.0 and hasn't received any upgrades to the engine or flight model, meaning you are at 13.0 purely because of the weapons that this plane carries, that being the fantastic AMRAM and AIM-9L. The problem though is that these missiles, the AMRAM especially, relies on the plane firing them to be at quite a high speed to extend the range of the missile. With the poor engine and airframe of the JA37, you can't really reach out that far with the AMRAM, only really having an effective range under about 10 kilometers. While you do carry the same weapons as the top dog American jets, you simply do not have the kinematic performance to match them. This means at the early stage of a game, which is basically just missile jousting at the minute, it's pretty much one-sided against you. You have to stick low and basically fly between mountains and then pop up in the mid stage of a game and basically fire an AMRAM at a distracted enemy. Firing AMRAMs is made even harder due to the fact that the JA37 has a very narrow track while scanned search zone. This isn't too much of an issue when firing at an enemy, but it nukes your ability to maintain a track while notching or cranking. You basically can't go defensive while helping the AMRAM track with the aircraft's own radar. It also means you can't really find enemies unless you're flying directly towards them. Basically, the avionics on this plane is pretty shit. All this being said though, if an enemy is above you within around 10 kilometers, the AMRAM absolutely will smash them out of the sky. It is an AMRAM after all, it's just let down by the poor airframe. One positive though that particularly helped me, because I'm pretty bad at top tier jets, is the large amount of countermeasures that you can take into a battle, with around 320 I believe, meaning you can basically just spam them and you're not really going to run out. But I wouldn't really try climbing and using chaff to notch missiles. I would stay low and try and defeating the missiles with terrain and or with multipath. But by far the main criticism is the price tag of $80, which is £65 sterling in the UK. This is frankly a ridiculous price to pay, especially when Stalker 2 just came out, and I think Stalker 2 is 30% cheaper than this premium, which is pretty hilarious. Even though the plane does come with 30 days of premium as well as 3,000 golden eagles, the price tag is just obscene in my eyes at least, especially for a vehicle that I could just not get to work with. But that being said, I'm a terrible pilot at top tier, so I'd look at some other content creators' videos before deciding to buy or wait. But from what I've seen and in the Discord, like the Guardian official Discord, most people are saying that this plane is pretty dog shit. To put plainly, in my opinion, the jet has a very poor flight model, poor avionics, it's terrible value for money, but it does have a great missile. Up next we have another premium. This is the AV8S. This is a premium for the Japanese, coming in at battle rating 9.7 and sitting in rank 6. This premium is purchased off the Guardian store for the cost of $60 or £50 sterling. For this you get a very mid plane in my opinion, with some very mid missiles. The flight performance of the earlier Harriers isn't great. They don't turn well, they overheat on max power very quickly, and they're also relatively slow compared to the things flying out against you. You basically get outturned by pretty much anything that you fight, and what can't outturn you can certainly always outrun you or run away from you. This makes it pretty hard to get decent results in this plane, but again, I'm not an amazing pilot. Some other content creators or players may have much better results. But the plane is armed with two AIM-9Ps. These are the export models of the AIM-9J. This gives them a lovely big field of view, allowing you to fire them at high angles off bore sight, allowing you to lead an enemy very well actually, but they're only really effective within a range of about 2.5 kilometers. So in theory they're great, but in my opinion this plane doesn't really suit the AIM-9J type of fighting. You don't want to be getting into a knife fight with this Harrier. I think the plane would be much better if it was using the AIM-9G, which has a far greater range, which would allow the player to sit outside the furball and fire the missiles into the melee. Like the J37DI that I've just covered, the AV-8S does get a large amount of countermeasures, which does allow it to take on pretty much any plane it comes across, but due to both the lack of speed and manoeuvrability, the AV-8S is very vulnerable to cannon fire in a dogfight, with the only redeeming factor being the Harrier's high rate of roll, which may save you from the first pass. It may throw off the aim of the incoming jet, but a smart enemy is just going to do a yo-yo and then come down on top of you and basically just pretend he's in a prop and boom and zoom your ass into the ground. But the AV-8S does have CCIP for the cannons, bombs and the rockets, allowing you to be pretty effective in the ground strike role and closer support in ground realistic battles I guess. But Japan doesn't really have a lineup at 9.7 and at battle rating 11.3, which is the next highest battle rating lineup the Japanese really have going for them. The recently added F5E FCU is much better in high cap and closer support as well. So for the cost of $60, you get a plane that isn't really good for anything, has missiles which don't complement the flight model, and only really exists to make the famously bad Japanese tech tree grind a little bit easier. Another bad addition in my opinion is the F-117. This is a squadron vehicle coming in at battle rating 8.7 in air realistic and 10.0 in ground realistic. This plane has no guns and very limited ability to carry ordnance, both in terms of the number of weapons and the ability to guide them. The F-117 is a stealth plane, but in War Thunder that mechanic is a little bit funky and doesn't really work if we're being honest. This is mainly due to the range issue. Stealth planes aren't really stealthy at visual ranges, and an enemy air defense system will literally just see you spawn as another black dot in the sky. Another issue is radar burn through, but I'm not really sure if Gaijin has this modelled into War Thunder, but this is basically when a stealth plane is so close to an emitting radar that it basically bounces back more radiation than the background noise. It basically gives its position away despite it having radar reducing features. It's a problem for real life planes, but it's usually within visual range anyway. So like the F-35 against the S-400, it's about 35 kilometers or 40 kilometers. At that point though, it's basically visual range if the plane's at high altitude. What I'm trying to say though is that in War Thunder, if you can see an enemy plane, you can basically lock onto it with your radar no matter what, unless it's like a really small radar dish. I'm not an expert in radar, but you know what I mean. It's kind of strange to add a radar or a stealth plane to War Thunder because you can literally just... I guess if it's a night battle, maybe. But yeah, we're getting a little bit off topic. What I'm trying to say though is that if an enemy can see you, they can shoot at you and fire at you with their radar. And because most enemy air defense vehicles are radio command guidance, they don't even need a radar lock to actually target you. One way I thought that the F-117 could redeem itself though is by using it as a CAS beast at 10.3, a battle rating that America doesn't really have any precision guided munitions. Instead, most American players are relying on the old trusty F-111A and its 8 3,000-pound bombs, but the F-117 can carry 2 laser guided bombs, which allows you to hit moving targets from high altitude, theoretically outside of the fire rate of at least some of the earlier air defense systems around that battle rating. The problem though is that the guidance camera of the F-117 is mounted internally. This means it has a very limited camera angles to the left and right of the plane. This means if you are dropping a bomb on an enemy player, you basically have to fly directly over them. You can't really turn away and go defensive. This means you're basically spawning in, locking an enemy, dropping that bomb and then just flying straight over them. This obviously makes you a sitting duck for any enemy air defense systems in the area, whether that is a radio command guidance such as the Roland 3 or an IR weapon such as the Ocelot. They can hit you basically from quite a long way away. The heat signature of the F-117 is massive for some reason. You can just get shot down at like 5-6 kilometers with like the Ocelot. It's pretty ridiculous to be honest, especially considering stealth planes are usually designed to have a low IR signature as well as a low radar signature. But anyway, I kind of feel like it's a massive gimmick. To be honest, I think the F117 should have been the premium for the game's anniversary. It's much more unique and cool than the KV7, and I think it would have been a massive boost to like getting it. Like if there was loads of headlines saying Gaijin adds F117 for birthday, I think it'd have given them a lot better publicity. Finally, for the purely bad stuff, we have the Scimitar. This is a battle rating 7.7 light tank located in the British territory. It has the same firepower as the Fox, which also sits at the same battle rating of 7.7. So why even bother playing the Scimitar? Well, that is a fantastic question, for which I do not have an answer. In my opinion, this should have been folded with the Fox, as it doesn't really have a purpose in game. It's much slower than the Fox, has a similar level of survivability, and it has the exact same gun and ammunition. While you could argue that the battle rating should be reduced, it would actually make the tank worse in my opinion, as you're going to be fighting vehicles with much thicker side armour. So you could say, well, is it better if we up tier the Scimitar, maybe to battle rating 8.3 where the British have a fantastic lineup? Well, we already have the Warrior at battle rating 8.3, which has the same gun, same ammunition, slightly worse mobility. It does get high res thermals, and more importantly, it also gets a very potent anti-tank guided missile. So again, what is the purpose of the Scimitar? I have no idea. We now come on to a vehicle that is both good and bad, and that is the halfway point between this video. The vehicles coming after are my good picks, and this vehicle it's both a good and a bad one, for which I will explain. This is the F-15 Eagle. This plane is undoubtedly the strongest jet in the game at the minute, both in air realistic and ground realistic. It received the upgraded F229 engines compared to the F-15 Charlie, which gives it a massive boost in thrust, easily allowing you to achieve Mach 2 speeds with a full air-to-air weapons loadout. This allows you to climb at the start of a match, get to your high top speed, and then fling off AMRAAMs at long range, with your Mach 2 speed giving the missiles a huge boost in range, allowing you to engage enemies that they simply just cannot launch back at you, as their missiles wouldn't have enough energy to reach and catch you. Unless you're within around 10 kilometers of an enemy going like Mach 1 plus, the missiles just simply cannot catch you, as if you just turn to the side or turn nose cold away from the enemy, your Mach 2 speed just allows you to simply outrun the missile. Even if a missile does catch up to you, it's going to be so lacking in basically energy, it's not going to be able to maneuver, so you can just like turn or do a maneuver or something, and you're basically just defeating the missiles through energy alone. You are still vulnerable at close range, of course, but as long as you stay high and fast, basically nothing can touch you. It's like Gaijin added the MiG-31 by mistake. It's a massive plane with very good missiles with a massive radar. So yeah, it's kind of just like the MiG-31, but it's American and called the F-15E. It's the same for ground RB really. You can carry an insane amount of ordnance, including the AGM-65Ds, Gs, and then a massive amount of guided bomb units, GBUs, paveways, that sort of stuff. So it's finally giving the Panzer a worthy opponent. The reason that I say that the F-15E is good and bad is because Gaijin isn't going to allow this plane to stay as dominant as it is. It's either going to lose the upgraded engines, or more likely they'll force the player to use the conformal fuel tanks. At the minute, you can equip this plane like the F-15 Charlie and basically just have it looking the same as the F-15A without the extra fuel tanks located on the intakes, I guess. If they do make you use the conformal fuel tanks, it would increase the weight of a plane massively, because it would increase the minimum amount of fuel that you can take into battle, which would weigh the plane down substantially, but I don't think it would be the end of the world, as you still have a massive amount of air-to-ground ordnance, but it probably would reduce the plane's dominance in realistic battles. But for the minute, the F-15E has finally knocked the F-16C off the top spot of CAS planes, and in realistic battles it literally has no competition whatsoever. If you aren't flying an F-15E, you have basically... The F-15E has no competition in realistic at all. The next good thing from this patch, in my opinion, is the graphics. The improvement to the DLSS has made my game much look better. To be honest with you, I don't really know how any of the graphic stuff works, but before the patch, the game looked quite a lot fuzzier with DLSS enabled. Now on quality, with max sharpness, the game runs smooth and looks a lot sharper, I guess. Again, I don't really know how this works or what they did to change it, but I really like it. Guardian also added ray tracing, which my 3070 can't handle. I do have quite a good processor as well, I think. I genuinely have no idea how computers work. I just turn it on and play War Thunder. That's pretty much it. It doesn't really add anything to the game, unless you've got like a Giga Chad gaming PC. Ray tracing just makes you can see reflections in water. I don't really know why you'd need it unless you're like, I don't know, unless you're like most people turn War Thunder down so they get higher frame rate, but I guess it's a good addition for people who like really high res games, but not. I prefer the DLSS improvements compared to the ray tracing stuff, but it's a good addition nevertheless. One of the best additions in my opinion to this update is the 9M33 OSA, or the SA8 Gecko if you're a NATO Chad. This has been added to the German, Soviet, British and Italian tech trees and sits at battle rating 10.3 in all tech trees, giving the respective 10.7 lineups an incredibly potent air defense system. The OSA is mounted on an amphibious 6x6 chassis with surprisingly good mobility, but the real star of the show is the missile. To start, it has a range of 10.3 kilometers, giving it better range than the ADATs. The missile also has nearly 8.3 kilos of TNT filler, giving it a huge blast radius. This means a near miss will still likely cripple the enemy plane or helicopter. It also has 25 Gs of pull and is very responsive to player input, making it incredibly easy to guide. Honestly, the OSA is literally the best air defense weapon available in the Italian tech tree, far outranging the automatic, and also makes the British 10.7 lineup even more powerful, as you can finally discard the junk that is the Stormer. It also massively improves the German 10.7 lineup, as it has 2.3 kilometers more range compared to the Roland 3, and also has 5 Gs more maximum overload. While the OSA isn't a sexy addition by any means, it is a massive improvement to several minor tech trees. While in the Soviet tech tree the Tunguska is still the better anti-air vehicle in my opinion, that system is located at battle rating 10.7, which means it cannot be used in the premium 10.3 SEAL clubbing lineup, whereas the OSA can. Because of this, the OSA is one of the best additions in this recent update, and I look forward to using it to knock out any SU-25s or KE-50s that spawn into my airspace. My final two good additions are both coming for the French tech tree. Up first we have the Dutch Leopard 2A5 and the 2A6. Both of these tanks are located at battle rating 12.0, both of them come with DM53, and both are absolutely great at top tier, despite being quite old in the game now. These two vehicles give a bit of flavour to the French tech tree, giving you a slower but more heavily armoured alternative to the Leclerc. While the French MBTs have a high pen round with a very fast autoloader, they are pretty squishy and can't really stay hull down due to the weak turret. Like the OSA, these new Leopards aren't particularly attractive to long-term players, as they are literally just copy and paste from the German tech tree, but it does finally give the French some competitive top-tier vehicles. Now the French just need a competitive top-tier premium to grind the bloody tech tree. And finally for this video, my last pick for a great addition is the Mirage 2000D RMV. This is located at battle rating 12.7 for some reason, but in ground realistic it drops down to 12.0, meaning it can be taken alongside the new Leopards and the existing Leclercs without increasing the battle rating to 12.7. This is an issue for some of the other cast jets in the game, such as the F-16C and the F-15E, as it drags the top tier American lineup up to battle rating 12.7, meaning it never sees a down tier to 11.0. The Mirage 2000D has the exact same flight characteristics as the previous 2000D R1, but it can now carry much more ordnance, including the massive PGM 2000 rocket-assisted bomb, which carries just over 500 kilos of TNT. These weapons are very similar to the AGM-65G, and is basically a guaranteed kill if they track. You can use the Damocles targeting pod to target enemy plays with the PGM, making them very easy to fire. You can also take along the PGM 500, which is similar to the 2000, with a smaller warhead, dropping down to just over 115 kilos of TNT. You can carry up to 4 of these bombs, but the 4th bomb is carried on the pylon used by the Damocles targeting pod, which I wouldn't recommend replacing. Because of this, I tend to use the PGM-2000 rather than the 500. You can also carry a range of laser guided bombs, but these obviously require you to release them much closer to the battlefield compared to the PGMs, and also require a constant laze to impact. You can choose between the GBU-12, GBU-24, GBU-49, GBU-50, BGL-1000 or the BGL-400. I tend to go for the GBU-49, which I believe is the Paveway 4. These are large enough to guarantee a kill on impact with a warhead of 115 kilos I believe, but they are small enough to carry several into battle. I combine both the PGMs and the GBUs, equipping 2 PGM-2000s on the outer pylons, as well as 3 GBU-49s on the centerline pylons, with the remaining 2 wingtip hardpoints carrying your air-to-air weapons, the fantastic Magic 2 all-aspect missiles, giving the Mirage 2000D RMV a very flexible and potent weapon load. So lads, what did you enjoy about this patch? What did I miss from this video? Leave a comment down below letting me know. But as always lads, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.